Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Today we're talking about the ham sandwich anomaly. The ham sandwich anomaly. That is a phrase I have coined, and I believe it needs to be put in the lexicon of our lives so we can all point to this when someone is guilty of suffering from it. Yes, I'm attributing guilt to an affliction many people have. But if it's something that can be pointed out to you and you don't correct it, you're guilty. So here's what I'm talking about. I did the video recently about the origin of the phrase the whole 9 yards and pointed out that the phrase goes back to the 1800s. And so it obviously did not originate with machine gunners in World War II and American airplanes and the length of ammo belts. And despite the fact that that's been debunked, that is not the origin. That couldn't be the origin. I had many people, dozens of people, log in underneath the video and say, well, but I heard it's from the ammo belts. And I'd say, well, did you watch the video? Yeah, I watched the video. But it's from the ammo belts. Well, how could it be from the ammo belts if it was originally from years earlier, decades earlier? And then I've had people say, well, Steve, maybe, and they start arguing. They want to defend a position that's indefensible. And so they go, well, maybe it was earlier, but it got popularized by the guys with the ammo belts. Well, how come in all of the first-person accounts of World War II that have been written, hundreds probably in book form, between, say, 1945 and 1955, no one in print ever said, by the way, when we unloaded all our ammo into a guy, we said we gave him the full 9 yards, the whole 9 yards. Never happened. Now, why is that? So I've had people say, well, Steve, they said it, but they just never wrote it down. And no one can ever explain this huge gap in the history. So that's not it. But the idea that you'd rather defend something that's wrong because it's funnier than accept the truth and go, oh, I believed something that was wrong, but I didn't know any better. There's nothing wrong with believing something that you were told and going, that sounds plausible, until someone comes along and says, by the way, that's not plausible. Here's the correct story. And I've had people tell me, like, I like the other story better. Of course you did. It was more entertaining. That's why you remembered it. And that is what I'm calling the ham sandwich anomaly, okay? That is, you hear the true story of something, but you'd rather cling to the factoid even though it's obviously wrong. And of course, I'm getting this from the story of Mama Cass Elliot, the woman who was a singer in the Mamas and the Papas, a 60s band. They had a hit with California Dreamin'. They had a couple other songs also. The band disbanded, and she went solo. And in 1974, she was staying in a flat in England, which, by the way, a few years later, Keith Moon of The Who would also die in the same flat at the same age. And the flat was owned by Harry Nilsson, apparently. But she died in this flat July 29th, 1974. And if you type in Mama Cass death into Google, it'll auto-fill in ham sandwich for you. Because Google knows what you're looking for. Because if you ask anyone who's familiar with Mama Cass or 60s music or 70s history, they'll go, oh yeah, she died because she choked on a ham sandwich. Mama Cass died because she choked on a ham sandwich. And I've heard that in many places. I remember hearing people on the radio mention it. I've heard people on TV shows mention it. And it's become accepted as fact that Mama Cass Elliot died by choking on a ham sandwich. And first of all, when she passed away, they conducted an autopsy. And in the autopsy, they determined that she had, in fact, had a heart attack. Now, she was a little overweight. She was not in good health. She'd suffered some health issues prior to this. She apparently had fainted not too long before this and had complained of health issues. She was performing and touring as a solo act. She was traveling, and so she was probably very, very tired and exhausted and had other health issues. But in 1974, Mama Cass Elliot died of a heart attack. But here's what happened. When she passed away, it caused a brouhaha, and the news and journalists descended upon the flat owned by Harry Nilsson, not knowing yet that Keith Moon had died there a little while later. And they started quizzing everyone who came and went. And somebody said to a reporter, they asked, well, what did the room look like? Where was she? And people are morbid, they're curious, and the reporters want this stuff. So it came out that she was laying in bed, and there was a ham sandwich on a table in the room. And now there's a dispute about the rest of this because there have been reports, and if you Google Mama Cass and it auto fills in ham sandwich, you can hit enter and look what pops up. And there were reports that one man who came out of the flat was a doctor who actually said she was laying in bed and she may have been eating a ham sandwich, and it's dangerous to be eating while you're laying down because you can choke more easily. Now, if the man actually said that, I suppose you can say, well, that's where that story began. At least we know where it started. But as other people pointed out, number one, the ham sandwich was not next to her on the table. It was on a table, but in the room. There were no bites taken out of the ham sandwich. So you can't choke on a ham sandwich that's on the table next to you, even if it was next to you, let alone across the room. And number three, when they conducted the autopsy, they specifically said it was heart failure and there was nothing blocking her air passages or anything. It was heart failure caused by the condition she was in that had nothing to do with the ham sandwich. The ham sandwich has gone down and become the most famous sandwich in history. Okay? Unless I'm sure people can pop up with other famous sandwiches in history. But the problem is that the ham sandwich choking and killing her caught on very quickly because many people thought, wow, that's bizarre. But they also remembered that she appeared to be a little overweight. And so it kind of became one of these moral stories where, well, I guess, if you can't control your eating and it kills you, it's kind of, you got what you deserved. And so it becomes kind of that thing where it's kind of like, she died choking on a ham sandwich, kind of the same way that drugs might kill a drug addict or something, okay? And so the idea of the ham sandwich is just an unusual fact in that story, okay? Why couldn't it, could it have been a turkey sandwich? Well, if it had been a turkey sandwich that was involved in the story, I suspect it wouldn't have gone so far because ham sandwich sounds funnier. So, we can speculate about that. But the point is that very, very quickly, they came out with the truth and said, no, she died of a heart attack, nothing to do with the ham sandwich. But the ham sandwich story stuck because it's more entertaining and people like to tell the story. And so, Mama Cass choked on a ham sandwich. Except she didn't. She didn't. So here we are, all these years later. 1974 was when she passed away, and that was July. And I'm suspecting that by August, the true story had come out. So going back the 26 years of that century and the 19 years of this century, you can do the math, but that's quite a while, quite a ways back there to go. Of that history, it's almost entirely been she choked on a ham sandwich, despite the fact that the entire time, except for the first week or two, we didn't know what killed her. It was a heart attack. So the idea that people won't let go of the ham sandwich in the Cass Elliot story is, in my mind, the ham sandwich anomaly. It explains why people won't let go of the ammunition belt story, or they won't let go of the Italian Hall story. I've mentioned before about the Italian Hall disaster, where somebody yelled fire, 73 people died. There was a stampede to get out of the building, but there was no fire. And in the stampede, the people got crushed to death going down a steep staircase. And someone started a rumor decades after the fact that the doors opened the wrong way. And that story was so powerful that they actually put it on the historical marker at one point, and it got written into books. And I found the source. I found the guy who first put it into print. And I can show you earlier sources that talk about the doors opening the correct way. And despite the fact I've written so much about it and talked about it here, people still come up to me and they go, well, I heard the doors opened the wrong way. And I've spoken at conferences, and after showing photographs of the doors opening the correct way, had someone raise their hand and go, yeah, but I heard they opened the wrong way. And now you might say, well, Steve, he's just telling you that he heard something. No, he's not. If someone's sitting in an audience and an expert just got up and gave an hour-long lecture explaining something, and you raise your hand to say you heard something different, you're not raising your hand to let the speaker know that you're a person who heard something. Everybody heard that. He's saying, I still kind of believe it. That's why I'm raising my hand. And do you want me to come to your house and give you the same presentation you just sat through? But he's clinging to that because that story makes sense to him, but also it's a story he heard first. And that's actually something that advertising people know about and psychologists know about that. Because if I get to you first and you've never heard of something, and I tell you a version of the events, and I say, here's what happened, boom, 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 and I can even spin it and let you know who the good guys and the bad guys are. Okay? If that story resonates with you, someone else can come up to you the next day and go, "Did you hear about what happened?" And you go, "Yeah, I did." And they go, "Hold on. Don't tell me what you heard. Let me tell you what I heard." And they tell you the other side of the story. Your first reaction in your mind mentally is to defend the version you heard against what you're hearing now. That is human nature. Okay? That is the ham sandwich anomaly. Now, I'm sure psychiatrists or psychologists or somebody has studied what I'm talking about here. How we want to cling to an incorrect fact over evidence to the contrary. You can call it anything you want. I'm going to call it the ham sandwich anomaly. And I think that it's the most appropriate one here because it's an example that everyone's heard. And yet, like I said, for 99.9% of the time since Mama Cass died, we've known the truth. She died of a heart attack. Had nothing to do with a ham sandwich, okay? And somehow that ham sandwich in that room had in essence like a murder pinned on it. And no one wants to believe that the others, the other version of it's true. She just died of a heart attack, which makes more sense, but it's not as entertaining, okay? And there are many, many other examples of this, and many of them are on the internet, many of them are urban legends. I'm not going to go into it because every time I mention one, people want to argue with it. And so a lot of these, like I said, are simply, they're not life-threatening. They're not the kinds of things that, how to behave at a stoplight or major issues involving legal matters. It's usually just trivia. It's usually just something we believed to be true, as entertaining when we heard it. We never thought it was life-changing, but we remembered it. It stayed with us. So it had enough value for us to retain it. And the real estate in your mind or your brain isn't that valuable, meaning that you can retain a lot of useless information before it actually starts displacing the important stuff. At least I think so. But if you want to believe something crazy or incorrect or stupid, I don't care. Believe it all you want. But you shouldn't go out and spread stories or continue to repeat stories. And I've had people jokingly tell me, "Steve, I like my version of it better. I'm going to keep telling it." It's a free world. But here's the other thing I've got to tell you is that we talk about the marketplace of ideas, okay? That is that there's nothing wrong with letting people speak because eventually the correct information will override the incorrect information if people are actually looking for the truth, okay? And so the marketplace of ideas will simply allow the better ideas to rise to the top. That is, of course, assuming that ideas and human interactions and their discourse operates like a marketplace, and it doesn't. And we've discovered that most recently with the rise of the internet and the news and how news and information are disseminated, especially during recent elections and so on. And so we've discovered that the stuff that rises to the top is not the most accurate news. It's the stuff that gets people riled up the most. And that could be news, or it could just be a wacky spin on something, or it might be something that's not even true at all. But the point is that so the marketplace of ideas doesn't operate like a true marketplace. And I understand that true marketplaces don't even exist except in theory. I'm not going to talk economists here. But my point simply is this, that it's fascinating to me that you can have a fact in your brain. Someone could present to you the truth and go, this is provably true, and what you're believing is false, and people will still hang on to it and defend it because to them it's more entertaining that way. So that, my friends, is the ham sandwich anomaly. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.